Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israelis gather to mourn the victims of the Orlando massacre. Israel bolsters security after last week's Tel Aviv terror attack, and a new Israeli app promises to steer you clear of reckless drivers. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. Israelis are joining the world in mourning the victims of the worst mass shooting in the history of the United States. On Sunday night, an ISIS-influenced terrorist opened fire on a gay nightclub in Florida, killing 50 and wounding over 50 more. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister is speaking out to the families of the victims and says Israel stands with the United States in combating terrorism. Last night, Prime Minister Netanyahu extended Israel's condolences to the United States, as dozens of Israelis gathered in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv to light candles and hold an impromptu vigil for the victims of the Orlando massacre.
כולנו מזועזעים מהטבח הנורא באורלנדו. אני מבקש להביע שוב בשם ממשלת ישראל ואזרחי ישראל את תנחומינו לעם האמריקני ולמשפחות בשעה קשה וטרגית במיוחד. הטרור הזה מאיים על העולם כולו. וקודם כל דרוש שהמדינות הנאורות יתאחדו ביתר שאת כדי להילחם בו. אנחנו עומדים כתף אל כתף יחד עם העם האמריקני.
Yesterday evening, Israeli mourners held signs condemning the attack at Orlando's Pulse nightclub at Jerusalem's Central Zion Square. At the same time in Tel Aviv, the municipality building lit up in rainbow colors in solidarity with the gay community. Both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem have seen their own attacks on the gay community in recent years. Just last year, a man stabbed several people during a Jerusalem gay pride parade, killing a teenage girl and wounding 5 more. In 2009, a gunman opened fire on a gay youth club in Tel Aviv and killed 3 people. Israeli leaders from across the political spectrum are standing together in support for the LGBT community in Orlando, and Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel stands shoulder to shoulder with the United States when it comes to combating terrorism. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack in Orlando, but it remains unknown if the extremist Islamist group ordered or just inspired the murder spree carried out by 29-year-old Omar Mateen. The gunman reportedly made a 911 call ahead of the attack, during which he proclaimed his allegiance to ISIS. Mateen is an American citizen who was born to parents of Afghani descent, and he managed to kill 50 people and wound 53 others before being killed in a gunfight with police. Yesterday's tragic shooting massacre in Orlando took place just days after 4 Israelis were killed in another terror attack in Tel Aviv. ILTV reporter Aaron Porras took to the streets of Tel Aviv today to see how Israelis are feeling in the aftermath of the Orlando tragedy. Let's hear what they had to say.
The terror attack last night in an Orlando nightclub, which claimed the lives of 50 and injured 53 more, is being hailed as one of the worst mass shootings in American history. So I've returned here to Sarona Market, where last week 2 Palestinian gunmen murdered 4 and injured 16, to ask some of the Tel Avivians if they have any thoughts they'd like to share.
It just happened in the Sarona 3-4 days ago, so it's just crazy, and I'm from Paris, so I received all the attacks as well a year ago. What I just want to give them is all my condolences.
It's make me feel even worse, because hate is something that makes all these victims for nothing. It's only hatred. I don't know what we have to do, but we have to stop hating. We have to stop hating each other.
While condolences were consistent, thoughts moving forward were spread all over the spectrum.
Maybe they would be able to understand what happens in Israel and what we are living every day. So maybe it's not a good point, but they would be able to understand what we are living. But for sure, I would prefer that it will not happen.
I feel sorry for them. I want them also to understand our situation. It's not the same, but it's the same reason, the hatred. So I hope peace will come for everything in the world, for everybody.
We have to do a lot of work. The political people and everybody.
Hatred is something which we come with races and religious, and as long as it will continue, we have Muslim, Judaism, or whatever, the hatred will continue. I'm not very optimistic. I'm sorry.
Optimism can always be hard to find in the face of tragedy, but at least some sort of advice was given, and in typical Israeli fashion.
stay strong and just keep living. That's what they are doing. As you can see, people are coming just a few days after just to take a coffee in the morning. So we just need to keep living, and that's all.
Reporting from Sarona Market in Tel Aviv, this is Aaron Porras from ILTV.
Israel has begun taking major steps to prevent additional violence following last week's deadly shooting attack in Tel Aviv. 2 terrorists from the West Bank opened fire on the city's trendy Sarona Market, killing 4 Israelis and wounding 16 more. Now thousands of Palestinians have been barred from entering Israel as the IDF beefs up its presence in the West Bank.
היום כינסתי את הקבינט, החלטנו על שורה של צעדים תקיפים. שללנו היתרי עבודה ממאות בני החמולות שלהם. שללנו גם את הקלות הרמדאן לביקורים בישראל מעשרות אלפים. איבינו כוחות בקו התפר וגם כאן בתל אביב. והחלטנו על נקיטת עוד שורה של צעדים שאני לא אפרט כאן.
More than 80,000 Palestinians have been banned from entering Israel and East Jerusalem, and the move has been welcomed by many Israelis. Travel permits have been canceled for West Bank and Gaza Palestinians who want to travel to Israel during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. And Israel has nullified the work permits of the terrorists' relatives. While the world has been quick to condemn the Sarona attack, some worry that Israel's new security measures amount to collective punishment.
We understand the Israeli government's desire to protect its citizenry, or its citizens rather, after this kind of terrorist attack, and we strongly support that right. But we would hope that any measures it takes are designed to would also take into consideration the impact on Palestinian citizens, or civilians rather, who are just trying to go about their daily lives.
While some claim that Israel's new security measures could further inflame the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, others say they won't have a big influence.
I won't tell you that achieving the two-state solution will end terror, any more than it'll end terror in Syria or Iraq, in Egypt. Terror is endemic to the Middle East.
The Israeli Prime Minister says that Israeli security have caught a 3rd person involved in the Tel Aviv terror attack. After closing down Yatta, the West Bank hometown of the terrorist, Israel has finally captured a 3rd person who cooperated with the murderers. Since the 3rd suspect's arrest, the Israeli army has eased restrictions on Yatta. Residents of the West Bank village are now permitted to enter and leave the area after undergoing inspection by the IDF. International coverage of the Sarona terror attack has sparked outrage in Israel. Major American networks like CNN are under fire for failing to accurately depict the nature of the Tel Aviv attack. CNN took a lot of heat for putting quotation marks around the word terrorists in initial reports about the attack, and for failing to mention terrorism even once in the accompanying article. A previous tweet that has now been removed appeared to call into question whether or not the attack was an act of terrorism, although it undoubtedly was. The news service later apologized in another tweet and acknowledged the shootings as a terror attack. The British Sky News Network and World Tribune were also found guilty of neglecting to use the word terror when writing about the attack. Meanwhile, The Guardian, Telegraph, and BBC headlines also only made references to shooting incidents in a Tel Aviv market, and all of the articles were devoid of keywords such as terror or terrorism. Israel took particular offense to one exchange held on MSNBC, when news anchor Ayman Molyedin and his guest Martin Fletcher repeatedly suggested that the attacks were somehow justified because of Israel's right-wing government and its security policies. While Israel has been dismayed by international misrepresentations of the terror attack, there has been some contrasting coverage. Fox News anchor Greta Van Susteren personally came to Israel's defense on her private Facebook page, adding she hopes that media networks around the world will convey their sorrow for Israel. With the recent wave of terror attacks in the United States and Europe, radical Islam is on everybody's minds. Social media is buzzing as people from around the world are speaking out against growing Islamophobia, despite the fact that ISIS continues to claim responsibility for terror attacks from Belgium to Orlando. Dr. Mordechai Cadell is here in the studio with us to talk about the connection between Islam and the recent terror. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
So, the terrorist in this Orlando massacre was influenced by ISIS, as far as we know. How is ISIS ideology entering and growing in the United States?
No, I would divide it. He was inspired by the methods and the ways how ISIS or Islamic State treats its opponents. But the ideology which brings a man to act against the LGBT community is well embedded in the core teachings of Islam. Because according to Islam, a family is only between men and a woman. And any connection, especially sexual connection between males and females, transgenders, and all these kinds of things of the LGBT community, this is something which is totally unacceptable by the core teachings of Islam. It's not ISIS. So the hatred vis-a-vis this phenomenon of LGBT is one thing, but the method which he got is the Islamic State.
So let's talk about this, issue of hate crime versus terror attack. Right now, we're seeing a lot of American officials who have initially come out and said that this is it's a hate crime to the LGBTQ community, rather than referring to the event as a terror attack. Why is that?
Because Americans try to look at the world from under the sand after they stuck their heads in order not to see the motivation of those terrorists in San Bernardino, in the Times Square, Fort Hood, a Marathon of Boston. All these places, all these things were motivated not by the hatred to America per se, but because those people were Muslims who hate America because America is viewed as infidel country, wine drinkers and swine eaters, and this is why they deserve such an end which they will bring to America, only to spread Islam. And actually, we see it already in America for years. A few years ago, I was driving in I-95, in Interstate 95, the biggest highway in the East Coast, between Boca Raton and Hollywood, Florida. And there were two giant billboards near the road. On one side it says Muhammad, Prophet of Mercy, and on the other side, what do Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad have in common? Islam. And this is freedom of speech. Means they come in some stealthy way to America to spread mercy to mankind on one side, and to spread Islam as the religion of Moses and Jesus as well. And freedom of speech is accepting them very well. Why not? Everyone can sell his merchandise. But, and this is, I would say, the majority, those who come to change America in a good way or in a peaceful way to Islamic State. And actually, the American authorities caught already in the 90s a memorandum, the explanatory memorandum of the Muslim Brotherhood, which was authored in May 1991, which explains all the methods and the ways which the Muslim Brotherhood organization is planning in order to take America over.
So I want to talk to you about Islamophobia also as an issue right now that's coming up. There are a lot of people on social media who are saying that the Orlando massacre is going to lead to greater Islamophobia within the United States and the world, and that terror is actually not a Muslim issue. Is that fair to say? What do you think about that?
First of all, I don't believe that there is some kind of a term named Islamophobia. Phobia is irrational fear from something. When it comes to Islamic extremists who spread terror, this is not a phobia. This is a real fear against or from real threat. Phobia is irrational fear from something which doesn't exist. But when it comes to radical Muslims who take the rifle and kill people or bomb cars in the Times Square, this is not phobia. This is a real fear. So if there is a fear against Islam, it is based on facts, based on history. What was the September 11? Okay, so this is why I don't agree with the Islamophobia, because Islamophobia actually says, hey, you are afraid of Muslims, it's unreal. There is no reason, no basis. It's baseless.
Now, speaking about, a peaceful Muslim community, people who are not engaged in radical Islam, what is the right way to combat these acts of terror without necessarily hurting that community?
For this, you need intelligence. You need to listen to what they say and to look at what they write. Unfortunately, they are, if one of them is a terrorist, so would you tolerate 100 who are not terrorists? You have to look very carefully and maybe to rephrase the rules of human rights and political freedoms and everything, because even if 1% of them is a problem, you have to be very careful. You know, if somebody gives you a whole bag of M&Ms and tells you that only one of 200 M&Ms is poisoned, how many will you eat out of this box or a bag of M&Ms? This is the same thing. Even if 1% of them is a problem, you have to start working, with intelligence. I'm not saying to put them all in jail, not at all. Yet you have to start working and maybe to start questioning all kinds of ideas like political correctness, and which, in my view, paralyzes much of the discourse and action against those terrorists.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And we hope to have you back soon, Doctor.
Inshallah.
A recent U.S. State Department report has named Iran as the world's biggest sponsor of state terrorism. Yet at the same time, the Obama administration has pushed hard to achieve a nuclear deal with the Iranian regime. Dr. Michael Widlansky is a leading expert in the war on terrorism, and he sat down with ILTV's Steve Leibowitz to talk about why he thinks the Obama administration has failed miserably at confronting the terrorist threat.
The United States, under the Obama administration, has wanted to make a deal with Iran from day one. And that's been very clear. And it's put out a lot of lies to cover up what was really a strategic démarche, a strategic change, about face towards the region, moving towards groups such as the Muslim Brothers in Egypt and towards the Iranian regime in Iran, and moving away from conservative Arab governments like Mubarak's Egypt and away from Israel. I would say that the last 7 years have shown what a success that policy has been, wouldn't you? A tremendous success. A blind man standing in front of a map of the world could throw darts and hit every place in the world where they've made a mistake, especially the Middle East.
So today, we have a situation in Iraq and in Syria where Islamic State certainly has a hold, but the West seems to be fighting back, aren't they? I mean, the United States...
You know how long it's taken? How many heads have had to roll down the slopes of hills in Syria and Iraq for the West to begin to get its act together? They spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get 4 people into the anti-ISIS movement over months. The US government is proud of this, how many missions they run. They never tell you how many missions are actually accomplished. This is a little bit like the old Vietnam thing. We have body counts and we have mission counts. But look at the cities that have been captured. The amount of territory that belongs to what is known as Al-Dawla al-Islamiyya, the Islamic State. Tremendous. Barack Obama called these people the junior varsity, the JV. Well, that shows 2 things. He doesn't know basketball and he doesn't know history.
Is the West losing the battle against world terror?
The West isn't winning. It had made strong achievement. It had achieved a lot between 2001 and 2008. The capture and the killing of bin Laden was as a result of interrogation techniques and intelligence efforts that began in 2001. Obama has basically cut back on those. And he was coasting on vapors since then. The level of terrorism around the world from 2009 through 2016 has risen dramatically. Not just ISIS, but all over. And the main reason is that the West lost its sense of concentration. And instead of fighting a war against Islamic terrorism, said, what is Islamic terrorism? Is there Islamic terrorism?
They don't even use the word.
They don't use the word. They're politically correct. There are other words I could use to describe this, but this is a family show. so we won't use them. But this is impossibly incorrect, incredibly incorrect. And it's not that somebody should be anti-Muslim, but we have to be realistic. When a significant body of the Islamic population of the world supports Salafi, jihadi movements, it can be 10%, it can be 15%, it can be 40%, we don't know exactly, but it's significant. We have to be cognizant of that, and we have to be protective of our own territory, and we have to be more assertive in our own military.
Most of us know that smartphones can be one of a driver's biggest distractions while on the road. But now it looks like one Israeli company is changing that. The Israeli phone app Nexar promises to use your cell phone to actually make your trip safer by monitoring collisions to keep you away from dangerous drivers.
So Nexar is a smartphone app that helps you prevent accidents on the road. It monitors all of the cars around you, and using sophisticated algorithm tries to get you out of dangerous situations, while it also protects other drivers by sharing information in real time.
The free app promises to create a safer driving environment by using your smartphone's camera as a dash cam. The camera records video and other data, collecting information about the road and its users. That data is then used to create a map of the city with real-time warnings about dangerous locations or vehicles that are driving recklessly.
If you're coming to an intersection the first time or the second time, then you'll get a warning with some data about like the number of accidents in that intersection.
Nexar even has the ability to immediately capture dangerous events, including car accidents.
The uniqueness of Nexar is that it works in real time, and it uses all of the sensors of the phone, particularly the camera, but also other sensors, to create real-time trajectories of every car on the road, and then predict when accidents are about to happen, warn you. At the same time, if an accident does happen, we have full reconstruction capability of the event. So if you're not at fault, you have all the evidence to get out of a situation.
Nexar was launched as a beta version in Tel Aviv and San Francisco, where more than 200 professional drivers allowed the company to analyze 100,000 miles of road per week. If you're wondering how many drivers the app needs to properly map the roads, the number is surprisingly low. Nexar needs an initial penetration rate of only 1% of drivers, and within a few months, Nexar promises to be able to calculate driving scores to almost every car in the city. The Israeli company hopes that their app will become a standard mandatory app for drivers to ensure safety on the roads.
Here we're talking about life and death. We're giving you the license to drive a really big machine that can kill people, and you need to be way more accountable, and we want to be part of it. But we're doing it not to become sort of the big brother or help big brothers. We think of it more of like many small or little brothers that are taking into account the feedback that we give them in their decisions.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. It's better to be safe than sorry, so today's word is betichut, which means safety in Hebrew. Israel's a world leader when it comes to betichut. Just think about all the amazing technology that the country has created to keep you safe. From phone apps to steer you clear of reckless drivers to airport security scanners that can detect terrorists through their sweat. So while the news may make it seem like Israel isn't necessarily the safest place to travel, if you come and visit, you'll find that's not always the case. Safety comes first in the Holy Land, and Israel makes sure to share its invaluable betichut technology with the world all year round. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. It's the beginning of a new week, and the heat is coming at Tel Aviv full force. Tomorrow is expected to be mostly sunny with a high of 91 degrees. Wednesday should be even sunnier, and the temperature will drop down to still steaming 88. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.87 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our evening update every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tonight.